I'll tell you what, I'll get going now because the first bit is more just some slideware stuff, just to set the context. I'm not going to be leaping around for this. I've done myself enough injuries today. What we're going to talk through is activity. Now, we're not going to have a lot of time to get into any deep technical stuff, so there will be some technical stuff at the end, which Tijs will get into. But really what I wanted to do is give you a bit more of an introduction, the breadth of things that we couldn't really cover in the summit, the initial keynote. What I'm going to, so there's some words here. I don't think I'm actually going to say anything which is not actually already there, so don't worry too much, but these days we're going to have to put up disclaimers about anything I say which is not true now may not be true, so please. Hopefully most of you know that what activity is. Where we're taking it as far as what we're thinking about it is not just purely as a business process engine, but also wanting to build up more around it as far as a business process management suite. And whether we call it a business process management suite or whether we start talking about application composition or sort of, solutions composition or orchestration or whatever, I've no idea. We'll leave that to the analysts as to come up with the right terminology for these things. But where we're trying to take activities both in terms of targeting the developer, but more importantly to us, targeting the business user. How can we get some of the power of process down to the business user? And that's really what's motivating us to do some of these things with activity. At its core, whatever it is, there's activity, it's rock solid, it's hyper performant, very low requirements in terms of the load on a processor. So, that rock solid core, if you want it, you've got it. Where we are. So some people will know about the history of activity. It started as a project in 2010, and what happened was a couple of the JBPM guys were not twiddling their thumbs. They weren't twiddling their thumbs. They were looking to do something interesting and maybe sort of jump forward in terms of what the process engine was doing at the time. So we hired in a couple of the leads from JBPM and started them working on activity. Now the incentive for us originally was we just wanted a replacement for JBPM in Alfresco 1, the ECM product. And it was really very focused on, okay, sort of how do we get the embedded workflow engine improved in Alfresco. But that project has really taken on its own life, and it is a full BPMN 2.0 compliant process engine, so it can be used for all sorts of different things. And what's been happening was we've been getting both community activity customers users coming to us and saying, we're using activity for this really sort of sensitive business critical process. Can we actually pay you some money to look after it? And until recently, we've been saying, no, we don't want your money. We just want to focus on our ECM product. But we also started getting our Alfresco 1 ECM customers saying, we want to use business process management more independent from the repository. Can you, give us support in the same way for activity? And we were saying, no, we don't want your money. So about this time last year, we decided we did want people's money. So we decided we were going to productize activity and grow it out to be more than just this sort of engine. And so we did an initial release in May. Now, we've been very quiet about this release. We haven't been making a lot of marketing noise about it. We haven't been pushing it very hard. And that's really because what we released in May was answering some of the immediate concerns that people wanted. I want an enterprise support for my engine that I've embedded in my solution. So in May what we put out was an enterprise version of the engine, a new administration app that gave you the ability to configure very easily clusters or individual activity nodes, but also to be able to monitor the processes within there. So what is actually happening in across all the processes. As a sysadmin, process sysadmin, stuff isn't working, so how could I drill in, find something that's not working and fix it for someone? So we released that back in May, and then since then we've been working on the new suite that we showed earlier this morning. We actually made that available 2 weeks ago in San Francisco at our summit there. So that's what's available now. And so what we'll do for this session is take you through a few more of those pieces and actually go through an example of building something with the quick step designer, just to, to give people a bit more of a flavour, and then give you a flavour of what you can do to extend that to make it so you can plug it into your own environment and customise it to particular businesses. First thing to say is what we're releasing now is really the first stage of where we're going. So this is really, treat it as an indicator of our intent. What's available now is currently in the cloud as a service. You can just sign up to it as an individual and you'll be treated as an individual. You can involve other people in your processes, but you have to know their email address, and everything is like individual to individual. But it is actually a full multi-tenant service available. So as an enterprise, you can pay us some money, get a full tenant up there, and you can be interacting, setting up groups, and having just being able to find people by name and interact with them that way. So what we've made available now is only in the cloud. Within a few weeks, we'll do the on-premises version of this as well. So everything that you can see in the cloud now, you'll be able to get and deploy on-premise. And then as we go forward, we'll start doing some more interesting things about stuff flowing between on-premises and cloud and everything else. I guess I've sort of alluded to this a bit. The way we're sort of, and this is the salesy bit, so I'll try and get over this quickly. It's more just so people are aware of how we're positioning this. So there'll be different editions of Activiti. Interesting. It's not from this end. Different editions. It's probably some nice wobbly cable scenario, which be different editions of Activiti, different things in there. So there's the core edition, that's really targeted at OEMs or people where they're building a sort of application with Activiti at the core of it, but not using a lot of the new UI and some of the capabilities that we're building around it. So that's going to be the core edition. Then there's the SaaS edition, the tenant. You can sign up as an enterprise tenant and get a full Activiti service, but it's purely in the cloud. Then there's the enterprise on-premises version of this. There'll be a couple of flavors of it, depending on how you want to scale out. The sort of SaaS version and the enterprise on-premises version, that's something which is priced on a per-user basis. And one of the interesting things we'll also be doing is making the multi-tenant edition available as well. So if you're in a big corporate and you've got maybe multiple different businesses you want to service, you could deploy Activiti as a multi-tenant internal private cloud or internal service and have process partitioning. Another good example of where we've got people talking to us around this is a big IT is providing some global capabilities, internal platform that's available across the organization, and they've got multiple applications that are using BPM as the orchestration engine for these solutions. They want to actually partition the processes for those different applications and treat them as each application as a separate tenant. So actually, being able to spin up Activiti as your own internal cloud offering is also something that we will make available, obviously with lots of zeros added onto the price tag for that one. So yeah, just to give you a flavour of how we'll be taking this out and trying to sell it to you people. And also, because this is supposedly a technical session, here's some boxes and here's an architecture. Really, so what you've got is the core Activiti engine is this piece, the various boxes here. And what we're building around it, so some of the elements that we sort of showed briefly today and what we'll show more around, there's different elements that will be plugged into this. And it allows Activiti to stand on its own. So you don't need Alfresco 1's repository to be able to use Alfresco Activiti. We do have situations where people come to Alfresco saying, we've got a process problem primarily, but once we sorted that out, we want to sort out our content problem. This gives us a way. This is going to be very frustrating if this equipment, because there's nothing happening here, is going to switch on and off. So you could start with Activiti to solve your process problems, and you can have content flowing through Activiti, but at some point you may want that to be going into repository. Okay, so that point when you want to solve your content problem, you can plug in Alfresco 1 and have the two working in unison together. But it does mean that there is a whole bunch of capability here, which is Activiti being able to run standalone. So its own basic file system, its own ability to do identity management, full text search, some interesting things where SharePoint protocol support. So you can just be using Microsoft Office, for example, and talking to content that's in flight and being able to interact with it without it necessarily being in an Alfresco repository or a SharePoint repository. You know, that's as much as I wanted to do on the slides. Really wanted to get into doing a demo on the capabilities here. So that's at this point where I switch to Tijs to actually drive this. Oh no, actually not yet, quite not yet. What I'll do is, so all of this stuff I'm going to show you, you can sign up for and play with online. Some of the features you only see as an enterprise customer, so you know, if you don't see it, it's because you're just there as a trial user. The idea is when you log in, you'll get certain tools available to you as mini apps, and depending on what capabilities you've been given, if you're in an enterprise, you know, different tiles, different app tiles will appear there. So, you know, you may not have access to the identity management or analytics or the design tools. I'm coming in as someone who's got a bunch of capabilities here. And so Kickstart is where you do all the process design and things like that. So some of the step editor stuff we showed this morning, and we'll dive into that in a minute. My task, this is the global view of tasks that have been assigned to me or processes that I can start. And that will give you across all the processes that you're involved in. As we get to talking about some of the process apps, and we'll show that, everything that you can do within a process app, all the tasks and all the processes you can see in a process app, you can also see in the My Tasks. So if you're a super user and you just want one place to go to deal with everything, you can go to My Tasks. If you're just want a more sort of focused view on certain things, you can come to a process app. And then analytics. So let me just, I'll give you a very, and this is really just give you a flavor of things. So on the identity management side of things, you know, if I'm just a normal user, I get to play with my profile, I can set my picture and I can, you know, give my sort of various capabilities. As a tenant administrator, I can work on particular users and be able to sort of interact with them and you know, change their status and sort of enable them in various different ways. Assign capabilities to people, so different groups have different capabilities. Organize things in different ways, so there's different people in organizations. Or in fact, if I'm actually doing tenant administration, I can administer you know, separate tenants as well. So that the sort of identity management gives you the whole range of possibilities there. Obviously, being able to synchronize with directories and user directories that an enterprise might have. The other piece I'll quickly show you is the analytics piece. And so this is, at the moment, it's standard reports. These can be extended by customizing it. But what this does is it gives you views into processes that have been running and allows you to choose a particular process and say, okay, over a certain period of time, I want to look at what's been happening and get some statistics back about what's been going on. So, you know, what tasks have been performed. You know, what are the most frequent tasks that have been performed there? What's the duration of the different tasks? And you know, being able to view the information in sort of lots of different ways, and being able to drill down. So for a particular task, I can see that that as well as being able to get min and max, you know, I get average and standard deviation. Well, maybe highlight that something's going on in a particular area, and I want to drill down in that, and I can see, you know, which people have been working on things, and you know, how many things they've done, what sort of duration it's been taken. So there's a whole number of different, you know, reports and data that you can get down and, you know, drill down into sort of more and more detail there. Things like service level agreements as well. So I could pick a particular process. Say for this particular task, I expect that task, over the last month, I expect that task to take, you know, I'm just going to guess at a random day. Oops, obviously a day isn't long enough to confirm customer identifier because none of the service levels were met. So, you know, maybe if I put 5 days in or something like that, I don't know what the data set is. Oh, right, okay. So it obviously takes a long time to do that particular part of the account opening. But yes, so different reports to give you views onto the information available to you. You know, what's been happening, you know, what are the slowest processes that are going on, you know, what's involved there, and, you know, what's going on over time and everything else. So there's a bunch of things that just out of the box give you views into what's going on within your system. So yeah, so some That's the boring sort of stuff. So the fun stuff is actually when we get into doing processes and designing processes. And that's what I want to move very quickly to, I think. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go over here and Tijs is going to drive the machine and I'm going to try and remember desperately what what the sequence is. So what we're going to imagine here is you know, it's not going to be, you know, gold core. This time we're going to deal with the Avengers use case where, you know, you have a super villain turn up on the scene. You know, how does Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. actually get the Avengers engaged in doing this? And he's going to create a process so that he can define, you know, just how he's going to get the Avengers involved in this process. So we're going to go into the design side of things. Because Nick is not a BPMN 2.0 expert, if he was, he could go in and design this in a nice Visio style way. Because he's not, he's coming into the step editor and he's going to create a new model. Now, the first thing, obviously, what's the first step you're going to do? Well, Nick Fury's going to have to tell the Avengers, you know, well, who is the supervillain? What information can he give them as background to this? So we're going to define a form up front that's going to allow us to collect that information. We'll just have a baddie report. Key piece is, well, who is the supervillain? Because obviously that's a useful thing to know. And if it's someone that we don't know, then having maybe, you know, S.H.I.E.L.D. have got some background on all the known supervillains, so we can just drop that in as well to give them background on that. So we're going to have an upload for that as well. The other key thing is maybe some indication of, you know, how imminent is this particular problem. So, you know, we've got a supervillain turned up. Is this an immediate problem, or is this, you know, something that they're just stomping around, not doing any damage yet? So let's have an idea of the risk involved here, whether it's immediate, imminent, or potential. So this is the basic information that we're going to collect up first step. I've got the form, so that's going to be what initiates my process. So until I fill in this form and hit the process go button, there is no process. The next step is, well, okay, so we're going to pass this to the Avengers to deal with. Now, one thing we do know about the Avengers is, well, first thing is they're going to have a first attempt at dealing with a supervillain. So what we're going to do is we've got a choice step here, and we're going to choose based on the field that we filled in earlier on. We know the Avengers are only going to deal with this if there's some immediate problem. You know, if there's not an immediate problem, then they're probably just going to sit and argue and continue not doing anything. So the first thing is they're going to have a first attempt. Otherwise, they're just going to keep arguing and ignore Nick Fury, because until there's a real imminent danger, there's nothing worthwhile doing. Yeah, think about doing something. So the first thing they're going to do is someone needs to actually throw something against this supervillain. So we're going to throw what we can. We're going to ask the Avengers to throw what they can at. Nick is going to ask them to throw what they can at the supervillain. We're just going to assign this to the Avengers team as a whole. So anyone from that team could sort of, you know, claim this task and actually choose to deal with the supervillain. So we're going to assign it to the Avengers. We're going to just ask for them for the outcome of their first engagement with the supervillain is, you know, just give us some feedback on that. And then also some additional sort of, well, what was the outcome of that? So first of all, just let's collect a bit of a comment from the superhero feedback. And then we're going to choose a couple of outcomes. So rather than this task when the superheroes completed it, is rather than just saying I've done it, is, well, there's two outcomes. One is that we actually squished the sucker, or the other is that, well, we got knocked sideways. So there's two possible outcomes from this engagement. So we'll save that form. So that's the first step of having a go at the supervillain. Obviously, if they're just going to sit there and keep arguing, then, you know, that's the end of the process. They're just going to ignore Nick Fury. Just no action, not until it becomes immediate. So we'll leave that as ignore Fury. Okay, so now we've got another choice where, depending on the outcome, we either sort of got the supervillain, or actually we need to send some more people in there. So let's go with the option first, where we're going to you know, assume that we didn't succeed. So if the outcome was that we got knocked sideways, then we're going to send in someone else from the Avengers. And again, we'll just assign this to the Avengers team. And this is where the first round was got knocked sideways. Are we going to actually jump in and do... Okay, we're going to do... The second choice is... where obviously if the first person who went in the round actually got rid of the supervillain, well, they're the hero of the day, so celebrations all around. Yeah, we go into the hero route where, yeah, we're done, finished, maybe high five and stuff like this. But otherwise, if we need to send someone else in, so we need to assign a task to the Avengers group again, and it's going to be up to the Avengers again to decide who is going to deal with that. Now, one of the features we've added here that I haven't shown is also, yeah, if you carry on doing the form, I guess there's a... Yeah. There's again the other thing of catching what the feedback was. But the other piece that we can show here is now, obviously, a usual thing in the sort of process where someone is assigned a task is escalation, something doesn't happen. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say that if nobody actually claims this task within a certain period of time, then we're going to assign it to someone. So who are we going to assign something to in the Avengers? Because Captain America, he's the grown-up amongst them. So if nobody claims this task within a certain period of time, then we'll just automatically assign this to Captain America. We'll only give 15 seconds for this because this is a demo. We don't have a lot of time to deal with it. So we'll throw Captain America if no one else claims to deal with it. And then, of course, ultimately, we know what happens is everyone tries, they all fail, and ultimately we have to send in the Hulk. So at the end of this process, we're just going to send the Hulk in to deal with this. And we just assign it directly to the Hulk. And with the Hulk, then when it comes to sort of capturing feedback and the outcomes, well, there's really probably only a couple of outcomes. I don't think there's going to be any comment from the Hulk, so it's just going to be Hulk wins, or the other outcome, I think, is Hulk wins. That's it. So there we go. We've defined a very simple process now. So the next step is to save this process. And then what we can do is, we could come back and iterate around this. We could share this with other people. But what we want to do, you hit publish, yes?
No, it should be first to create the app.
Do we? Oh, we do. Yeah. So we created the process. So now what we want to do is get the process app defined so that we can deploy this. Now, normally you do this where you'd have multiple processes that maybe the different processes that Shield would have with the Avengers, and they'd all be bundled together. We've just got this one process again. Some of the nice things here before we hit save and publish this is, if you imagine, we can add multiple processes here. When this is published out and made available to people to use, it's instantly available to them. They can add it on the landing page, start using the processes. But Nick Fury can come back here at any time, modify the processes, maybe add additional ones here. When he hits publish again on this application, that's automatically deployed. Any processes that are already in flight continue flying. But anyone who starts a new process, they'll be using the new processes from within that. So as far as the end user is concerned, they're just using the HR app, the Avengers app, the customer services process app. They don't have to worry about it. So it's a very nice way of grouping and managing the life cycle of a set of processes. So if we save that, we can publish it. So now it's been published. We can before. Do you know what? Well, let's go back in there and just show some of the other things quickly that we can do. So some of the things that you can do with an activity, which we haven't shown you really obviously, is all of the models that you produce, whether it's with a step editor, whether it's with the BPMN editor, whether you're creating a form to define, to use in your forms library, or whether it's your apps, they all have this sort of basic same thing of being able to modify properties, being able to share things with other people. So Nick Fury can create this process definition, an app, and he can then share it with someone else to collaborate with him, whether it's just to get feedback on it from read-only, or you can give Captain America write access as well. So Captain America can come in and modify the process here too. And that applies to all of these different elements. So you can be working on a BPMN diagram and share it with someone else, read or read only, or read write. You can also do things like favoriting. You can do things like adding comments. So as you're interacting with someone building up a process model, you can add comments around, as I'm developing this, what is the life cycle for this process? Give you some feedback. version history as well. As you save new versions of the process, it goes into a process repository which is versioned. So you can go back at any time. Well, you can always see the comments associated with the versions, but you can also roll back to a previous version of a process as well. So all of these sorts of capabilities are just available across the board. The other key thing here, which I won't say press and do, is the down. So you can export. You work in the step editor. You can press the download button, and you'll get a full beepingmen2 XML document, which you can go and deploy in any beepingmen2 editor or any beepingmen2 engine to run. So let's run this, shall we? So I've defined this app. I can share it with other people. I'm just going to sort of start using it with myself, add this to my desktop. And now anything I do, if I drill into this view, first of all, you get this nice little sort of, theme here, so you know what context you're working in. I'm going to start the process. So let's start this process. And if I'd had 5 different processes in there, they'd be listed up there and I could pick the process I want. Here's the form I sort of gave initially. As I showed in the demo this morning, we can go into Google Drive to get content in here. We can go to Alfresco Cloud to get content. With the on-premise activity, you'll be able to go to your activity on-premise repositories and pull in content. Here, Tijs just grabbed it from the desktop, and we're saying that there's an immediate risk, so that will go down one particular start path. So here we go. So as the person that initiated this process, I can always come back to this view and see exactly where I am in the process. So I can see what the active task is, I can see what has been completed, nothing so far, and any content or commentary that's been added as we've been going through. You can also see the process diagram associated with that. So this is the beepingmen2 full generated diagram from that step editor. So you can see, there's a bunch of the beepingmen2 experts amongst you. You can see the sort of wait timer thing going on there. Now, it's not something you wouldn't want to give a business user a tool to design it, something like that. Whereas with the step editor, you're encapsulating a lot of the beepingmen, the process capabilities in nice snippets. The other thing you get to see here is the blue shows you where you've been, and the green, it's not too clear on here, is where you're at. So you can see we've started, we've already gone down the route here where we're waiting for someone to throw everything at them. And then we can, if we came back in here later, we see as we step through the process where we are. So the other thing is here, we uploaded an Office document. We've got this easy web-based preview of everything that's going on here. So you can always come in and see what's going on. The other thing we can do, should I go in and, yes, let's give it a try. Oh, no, this won't work. This is where Microsoft Office will remember that I've signed in as someone else. The other thing that you could do is if Microsoft wasn't so painful about remembering authentication, and we're at Nick Fury now, you can also use all the SharePoint protocol support. So you can just open that document within Microsoft Office and work with Word, save it, and then it will get you'll be able to continue with that document flowing through the process as well, all without needing to have the Alfresco repository involved at this stage. So Nick Fury's kicked this off, so now we've got to go over to the Avengers to deal with it. So we're going to go in as the Black Widow, and the Black Widow is going to be one of the people that potentially could work with this task. Now, she's not had the task assigned to her, but she can go in and see what's waiting in the Avengers queue, and she can see that there is this opportunity to have a go at the villain. Now, Black Widow tends to actually want to prefer to go in with someone else, so she's going to involve Hawkeye in this particular thing. Now, what would happen if I was Hawkeye is, if Hawkeye was to log in, he would now get this task in his inbox. He'd be able to see this task. What he wouldn't actually, you need to claim it as well. That's the other thing. You want to claim the task.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So the Black Widow has claimed this task. She's involved Hawkeye. Hawkeye will see this task in his inbox now. So Hawkeye could interact with the Black Widow, add comments about how they might be able to deal with it. If Hawkeye's found any additional information about, Loki that they want to use before their first engagement, he could add it in there as well. But what Hawkeye wouldn't be able to do is complete either of these actions. So only the Black Widow, because she's claimed it's assigned to her, only she can complete the actions. So let's assume that Hawkeye and Black Widow have a go, but of course, you know how the film goes, they never succeed first time, so they're going to have a bit of a failure and going to get beaten by Loki, so it's now going to go to someone else to work on. Now, it just so happens that we're still logged in as the Black Widow, and we're still looking at the Avengers queue, so the Black Widow again can see that it's someone else's turn to have a go at it. Now, if you remember though, if no one claimed this task within 15 seconds, then it was going to get assigned to Captain America. So let's just see if that's happened. So we can see now, if we switch to the process view, that this has now been assigned automatically to Captain America. So if we go to Captain America, he's got that task with him. And again, you know, Captain America, he's a great guy, but we know again that he's not normally the one that sort of sorts things out. So I think we can decide that Captain America is going to fail as well. So then ultimately, what happens with the Avengers is always left up to the Hulk to sort out. So if we go in as the Hulk, we'll see it's left with him to deal with. And yeah, what always happens, Hulk wins. That's the only outcome here. So that gives you a flavour of how these things are wired together. It's sort of what you can do. Before we jump, so what were we going to do now? We were going to go to the stencil editor. But before we do it, I just wonder if, yeah, let's go in as Nick. But just to give people a quick look at the beepingmenator editor, just to, if we create a new process. So that's the sort of the business user oriented way of defining process. You know, the one thing that is Activiti does have the full beepingmenator capability. So you can build a full rich process diagram with all the complexities around it as well. So the full expressive capabilities are there. And what's possible for you to do is you can define something in the step editor that generates beepingmenator. You can then import that into this editor and enrich that further. So you could start with a business user capturing their view of their process and then pass it on to maybe a business analyst to enrich it a bit further. And then you can pass it down to the Java developer through the Eclipse plugin to actually go and take that the next level down in terms of integrating that in with maybe the other pieces there. Now, one of the cool things that we've added to both the beepingmenator editor and also the step editor is the ability to have stencils. Now, the idea of a stencil is a stencil defines the palette of elements available to you to define your process. So in the beepingmenator diagramming, it's you know, what are the boxes that I can drag on and link together in there. I can restrict the set of boxes that are available to me. I can rename them and I can group them in different ways. And that gives me the ability to customize the process palette to maybe a particular set of users or to a particular domain. So for example, you could imagine, you know, I've defined, I've got some integrations with my HR system. So I could create a plugin that integrates Activiti to HR, the HR system, and define the interface for that as a box in Activiti stencil. And then you can just drag and drop that box in and interact with, you know, the external systems that way. What we're going to do is show a similar thing for the step editor, where we want to extend the step editor, add a new type of step, which is going to be merging documents, where we're going to call out and do some processing on a couple of documents. And what we're doing here is, I mean, we could go and remove some of the choices on the palette. We could, you know, rename some of the choices. We're adding a whole new element to the design palette for the step editor, where we're saying, okay, there's a new step available to the business user, which allows them to say they want to actually merge multiple documents. So we say what properties we need to put on the step box for them to fill in, what, you know, Java classes or whatever need to be called at the, you know, when we actually invoke this particular process, the type of the properties and everything else. So what we've got here is we've got a merge document step. We've said the Java class that is going to be called from this. We define the properties that are going to be used to be passed into that. And I think that's pretty much it. We've defined the stencil. Now we've defined that step and that stencil. What we can go into is we can design a new process, and we can say that we want to use this stencil as the design palette we want. So now if we click on the steps, you can see we've got the merge document step on. Now, all of you will have noticed that we haven't restarted any server. In any of this demo, we've not restarted any servers, or we've not touched any XML either. This is just, this is all visual design stuff. So for merging the documents, we need to upload 2 documents that we're going to take and merge together. So we're going to design a start form with 2. Well, we'll do. Okay, we've got the 2 documents in there. Yeah. And then we'll add the merge document step. And you can see this is where the piece that Tijs added on to the step definition, the stencil set, comes in. So now basically if we deploy that as a new app, going as fast as you can, it's still quicker than Java development, I promise you. So we can start using this new process app. Obviously that could have been a process we just added to the Avengers app. So now if we initiate that process, we get the form for Nick Fury to fill in. So as Tijs allowed, we could add some of the things, all the controls when you're filling in the forms. There's all sorts of different parameters you can give for the controls on there, whether it's single document, multiple document, whether you want the content to be uploaded to be copied into Activities transient file store, or whether you just want a link to be put there. So if you've got it in Google Drive or Alfresco already, you can just have a link that takes through the process. If you're in an external system and the content needs to flow outside of an Activity repository, then you could actually copy the content into Activity to drive it through. So we've uploaded a couple of documents here. You've actually done the merge step as well?
Yeah. That's automatic.
You've run it? Oh, it's automatic, of course.
Automatic,
Yeah, it's all magic, sorry. So here you can go. You can see, with the new step added in, we've got that document merging happening just, by sort of integrating it. So you can see, some nice ideas here in terms of how you can extend the capabilities of the design tool and push that down to business users in different ways. Also, how you could start using some of the technology here to do more interesting processes particularly where it's to do with content. So some of the things that we're trying to do with Activity is exploit the content expertise of Alfresco. You can see we're using things like SharePoint protocol, being very document-centric. You can imagine being able to use this to do things where you're going through a process and generating a document out at the end of it, which is composed of different elements depending on the process you've gone through. Maybe an RFP or an RFI or even a contract. And at the end, maybe that's the point it goes into an Alfresco repository to become a record or to go through some other way of working. So I think, are we done in terms of time? Have I remembered everything that we were going to talk about?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
3 minutes left. So.
Okay, 3 minutes left for questions. So yeah, thanks so much, Tess, for keeping me straight there. So that's all I wanted to say. So let's open up for a few questions. Obviously, we'll have to empty the room for a bit. So any questions that you think would be of interest to people in general, please ask. Any questions which are more personal to your particular instance or very deep technical that you just come and ask us afterwards, I would suggest. So take a question right at the back.
You mentioned about integrating Activity with the HR systems.
Yep.
So which HR systems can integrate together, integrate to SAP?
Yeah, so in terms of out of the box, what do we provide? So we've got integrations into a number of different service buses that integrate with things. So things like Mule, things like Camel, that's often a way that people will integrate into those other sorts of systems. So it's not necessarily direct. If you want it direct, if it's your own homegrown system or you've got something like a Java interface or a REST or a web service interface, then as Tijs showed you, actually just sort of giving the class name or the REST endpoint or whatever, you can directly drive from Activity into those other systems. It really depends on you. So out of the box, no HR system specifically, but in general, all sorts. As we go forward, it's a good question. So as we go forward, we will be building out the connectors here. Some of the connectors we'll be working on initially will be cloud-based. So one of the most common use cases that we come across is people want to use process with Salesforce. So we'll do an integration with Salesforce, so from within Salesforce you'll be able to start an activity process. It will be able to take information, data, content from Salesforce, flow that through a process, and maybe bring that on-premise in a hybrid workflow, and allow you to do things quite creatively that way. Also be able to do things like talk to Box, Dropbox, Google Drive and other sort of file systems for different purposes. Any other questions? So I'm going to...
The statistics you showed earlier, is that also available in the in kind of Alfresco system that has integrated?
So at the moment this is in the standalone activity. One of the things, so again, I need to be really, I'm not a sales guy, so I have to be honest here. So where we're starting off with activity is what's available now and what's going to be available with the first on-premises release of activity is a standalone product. It can talk to an Alfresco repository in the cloud or on-premise in terms of getting and putting content, but the interaction, it is an external workflow engine. What we'll be releasing soon after that is a share connector, and that will allow you to say, okay, I want to use Activity's smart process design and some of the smart new stuff around activity and overlay that on top of my Alfresco 1 repository and bubble that up within share. So all the sort of easy design capabilities, the inbox and some of those other things would then bubble up within share, and the analytics then would be being able to be picked up from your Alfresco 1 processes. Whether we'll be able to migrate existing, and this is me being honest, whether we'll be able to migrate, our goal is that if you've got activity already used and you've got data, historical data there, that when you plug in the share connector, it will use that history and you'll be able to use the analytics, the reporting on that as well. But it's not the same full reporting capabilities that was demoed in the product demo this morning with a sort of full analytics drill down and cube type analysis. This is very much statistical reporting as an initial capability. I think this is the thing I need to emphasize is, this is still early days. So everything that we've shown you today is stuff that has been evolved since we did the initial release in May. And the initial release in May was the engine and sort of monitoring tools. Everything else is stuff that we've done since May. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the investment and velocity in which Alfresco is putting into this. So this is going to be moving very quickly. So some of the things I show you today, come back in a month, keep an eye on what's happening in the cloud version, come back in a month, it will be another step forward, and keep stepping forward. So what we're really interested to hear from you is, from what you see now, what are the key features that we should be adding in that's going to solve some of your particular business problems? So we're very interested in getting input from people as to what would really help solve some of their current issues or problems.
So how can we interact with you guys about sort of helping to guide where what we see our customers needing?
You're with a partner, so you've got a nice channel already. I think what is the best way? So, one of the things you can do actually is within the app, there are a couple of places where there's a little envelope icon, and that you can just fill in and give us some feedback from within the app, and that comes to the activity team as a whole to look at. So yeah, it is, even within the cloud system, it is possible to give us some feedback from the process designer on some of the different views. There's there's a letter icon.
But also the open source activity projects that we are
It's still
very
moving.
vocal in the forums, and you can find our Twitter stuff and email addresses there. So just send us emails or tweets or what you like.
Yep. So we've probably got time for one more question before someone gets upset and kicks us out. So any last question? Can I ask you? We can talk later, but any other questions? You had a question, did you?
Actually, you answered it. Was
Okay.
about the share connector. So.
Okay. Any other questions or? Okay. We can catch up later. I just want to make sure that people can get on to the next sessions and everything else. So thanks very much, everyone, and love to hear your input on what we should be doing next. Thank you.